From a top secret, highly secure network of secure locations across South Texas, this is the Spurs Insider Podcast, brought to you as always by Taco Palenque, where you can get the best fajitas in Texas. Stop by any of the Taco Palenque locations and try the limited time chicken al pastor quesadilla and pirata. Don't forget to pair it with an ice cold frozen margarita. Try the lime, the mango, and for a limited time, guava. Taco Palenque keeps San Antonio cool and well fed, and is the best pre or post game meal for watching the Spurs. Our colleague Tom Orsborn is taking some well-deserved vacation this week. I wasn't sure how we were going to be able to go on without him, so we got a replacement I think the listeners, the viewers will enjoy. I'm your host as always, Mike Finger, joined by Spurs beat writer Jeff McDonald, the Express News, and replacing Tom this week, we have a longtime friend of the podcast, a longtime friend of the newspaper, Olivier Philpon. For 20 years, he covered the NBA for L'Équipe, one of the biggest sports newspapers in France. He was around Tony Parker, covered 4 Spurs titles. Now he's working, covering the NBA for RMC Radio, the biggest sports station in France. Just want to thank you, Olivier, for joining us. How are you doing today?
My pleasure, Jeff, and bonjour to everybody. And
Hola.
20 years. Are you saying we're getting old?
We might be getting old, Olivier. Just to refresh my memory, because I remember you way back in the day when Tony Parker was a 19-year-old rookie. But what was your kind of deal like when you first came to San Antonio from France? Was that it was because of Tony, right? You moved here?
It was, I'm going to give you the short version, but I had already moved to Vancouver. I was actually covering the Vancouver Grizzlies for my own amusement because nobody cared at the time. And then in 2001, the Spurs selected Tony and he came to San Antonio, and I was thinking of moving to Portland at the time, and last minute, I was married to a French woman. We decided to go to San Antonio because of the weather. We just didn't know how hot it was in the summer, but
bad move.
Bad move. But sports-wise, it was fun because I moved there. Tony became big. I was writing for L'Équipe. It's, as you said, for NBA titles, I got lucky enough to meet you guys, and also people like Pop and Manu and Tim, and it's been quite a ride. And because I'm a cliche of a French guy, I coach soccer on the side. I used to be a chef. I've done a lot of things on the side, and I stopped covering the NBA when the Spurs kind of sucked. And I am coming back because Wemby, there's no way you can miss something like this. And I literally didn't have to call anyone to get a job. People were calling me. That's how high the demand for, to cover it.
I was going to say, we're all getting older, but the French rookies are staying the same age with the Spurs.
That is something crazy, huh? Jeff, you're almost 19, so let's do this again. Hopefully with a little bit more, thinking about how to approach the situation. And I'm talking about us, the way we cover that. I'm sure the Spurs know exactly what they're doing, but no, it is exciting time because, I'm sure you saw the video of what that kid can do, and you've seen him play a couple of times in the US. I was talking with Tony last week. We went out and he had him playing. He was playing for Villeurbanne as well in France for 1 year. And even he said, he's absolutely amazing. The stuff he can do is it's unbelievable. Now,
I'm sorry, Olivia, you had mentioned about, when the Spurs won the lottery and obviously we're going to hire Wemby, that people started calling you, wanting you, knowing that you're a South Texan now. You've been here for 2 decades, and they knew you were here, and the French media was scrambling to try to get a journalist to cover him. How would you compare just the French coverage, the French interest in NBA basketball, interest in Victor Wembanyama, compared to 20 2 years ago when the Spurs drafted Tony Parker.
Okay, so this one is for Jeff because I know he loves music. I think at the time when Tony was there, I was covering for French people. That's important. I was covering a country music singer. Nobody really cared except the basketball people. Now it's like the Beatles. I mean, it is insane. I know there's already a couple of French writers that are coming to spend the entire year in San Antonio. I mean, the demands are everywhere. TV, radio, everybody has a podcast these days. I mean, and we're not just talking about sports people. The last year of Wemby in France, that was completely unseen. What happened in Paris, I mean, everybody who's in the entertainment, the politics, world, everybody went to see him. And it was, again, the Beatles, and it's coming to San Antonio.
What would you say was Tony's role in kind of setting the stage for that in France? Like, how much did he change the perception of basketball in you guys' home country?
Well, it's been a work in progress. I mean, like every country in the world, 92, the Dream Team completely changed the way basketball was perceived, and that's when basketball started growing, especially in France, who has a huge diversity. I mean, we became very, very good at basketball suddenly, and I was thinking of this summer, I was looking at statistics. I don't want to bore you with that, guys, but the youth category, the French national team won the title in Europe or made the final or the semi-final from U15 to U20. The potential of French basketball is insane. And if you were to talk to any NBA scouts, they're probably capable of giving you half a dozen of those kids that are today 15 to 16. I mean, there's so many coming down the pipeline. What Tony did by winning, he made the NBA, which, again, you have to put it in context. It is in the middle of the night. It is a top sale in Europe. It changed the way French people looked at at basketball, and at the same time, Germany was doing the same with Nowitzki. People got up at night, and suddenly Tony Parker winning. I mean, he made the cover of L'Equipe, of all the big newspaper, and that was absolutely unseen. And Wemby doing that before he even footstep in the US. To me, that's the biggest difference. He's coming as a superstar. Everybody in France is expecting big things from him, just like everybody in San Antonio is expecting big things. And that's where the pressure has to be. I mean, you cannot compare. He's tremendous.
Right. Along those lines, we've seen the photos of Wemby as a young boy wearing the Spurs jersey. And obviously, like a lot of kids who liked basketball in France at the time, they were Spurs fans, right? During your 20 years of covering the team, how would you kind of describe Spurs fanhood back in France? I mean, were there people who considered themselves Spurs fans, or were they Tony fans? And I guess this is probably a natural transition into one of Jeff's favorite topics and mine, the whole Manu Tony back and forth, which you were in the middle of, where the journalists from Argentina were always upset with Tony because Tony didn't pass Manu the ball. I guess this is a multi-pronged question, but just kind of review that whole kind of period in time when the Spurs were taking over French basketball fanhood there.
I'm gonna try my best to answer you, but Manu, there was never any issue in France because it was mostly from Argentina. And no, seriously, I mean, Manu represents a brand of sport. Forget basketball, a brand of attacking a game, any kind of game that we absolutely love to death in France. He plays with passion, with heart, and took Pop a few years to understand what he had with, I'm gonna let him be him. You love that kind of player to death. Tony is a different kind of animal. He was the point guard. Yes, I can see some moments, but at the end of the day, those two guys were the ultimate teammates together. So there was no issue as far as French people. Now, What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I rambled too long. Were there Tony Parker fans in France, or were there genuine Spurs fans during that time?
It was Tony mostly, but you cannot have one without the other part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And San Antonio became something. I mean, if you knew, I'm going to to insult a little bit, people from San Antonio, and I don't mean it, but if you knew how many times they had people coming from France or Europe and telling me, what is that thing downtown, the Alamo, and I had to explain to them, they had no clue what it was.
Uh-huh.
And you put it into context where, history in Europe is everywhere, and that's the biggest difference. That there's no excuse. I knew what the Alamo was, and I knew John Wayne was not at the Alamo, so I knew my stuff. But
I hope he told them that the Alamo is the gift shop for the Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Oh my gosh, I didn't go there, but it's like every time they come, I'm like, that's it? It is that small? Yes, it's small. That's all there is left.
Right.
It was everybody that came from Europe. But what I'm trying to say is that Tony, the Spurs changed something. It became Spurs. And you have to, again, context. Spurs in Europe was not San Antonio. Spurs was Tottenham Hotspurs, the soccer team in England. I think Steve Nash was a big fan of that team, and I was always kidding with him about that because Tony, Manu, they changed that perception internationally, and the Spurs are now, they're now the Spurs. They're San Antonio. That's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
That's funny. The Alamo actually would be one of the newer buildings in Paris, right? When you talk about the comparison of history, there's
pretty much, guys. Yeah, but this is when you become arrogant and you become very, very French. So I'm gonna give it to you. You have people coming at you telling you how old it is, and you're like, my house in France was 350 years old. This is what it is.
That's great. There's something great about, and I'm not poking fun at Olivier here. It's just awesome to hear a French guy say arrogant. Like, cause it sounds even more arrogant than the word arrogant. It's just awesome. I love that so much. I don't mean to sound arrogant.
We say English because that's where we go. There's another label. It's the English people. I don't know, guys.
Yeah.
No, but it's all good fun. It's all good fun. Just I've been here long enough to see both points of view. At the end of the day, just get an education, understand what happened, where it happens, and respect it. That's all I have to say.
We're talking to you just a month after the player who you covered so closely and so well for so long in the NBA, went into the NBA Hall, or not the NBA Hall of Fame, the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. I guess I should get your thoughts on that. Just kind of put in perspective what that meant, what you thought about with him going in, just the accomplishment of seeing that teenager become a Hall of Famer.
Beyond the visual a bit, and I thought he was playing golf that day. I'm like, what did I miss? Is it the Ryder Cup or something? But it's, I got lucky enough to be very close to him the first few years in San Antonio because he needed, it's not easy to be away from your country, your family, and you're 19 years old. So he had a list. That guy knew where he was going. He had a list of accomplishments he wanted to do, become starter, win the NBA title, going to being, in one of those top team at the end of the season. I'm forgetting the name in English, but going to the All NBA team. Thank you. And going to the Hall of Fame was really at the end of this because that means he's old and that means he's done. But it was on the list, and you're like, I don't know about you guys. If you made a list like this when you were a kid, everybody wants to be a fireman. Are we okay with that? I had no clue what I wanted to do. And that's, to me, that's why those guys, the Tony Parkers of the world, the Manu, they become special. They have something special and they stick to it. Good or bad. They stick with it as long as it takes. And that was kind of when I was asking, what do you do next when every dream you had as a kid, you made them happen? And Tony kind of smiled and looked at me, smiled, and he's like, I don't know. That means he knows he's got something.
Right.
That's
fascinating.
when Pop was when it was announced that Pop was going to be enshrined at the Hall of Fame, he tried to downplay it and say, nobody grows up, saying they want to be in the Hall of Fame or dreaming that they could one day be in the Hall of Fame. And the first person I thought of when Pop said that was Tony Parker, because that guy did. Pop's wrong about that. Pop's wrong about that. Tony Parker was the one guy that thought, I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame one day, and sure enough, pulled it off.
But that was for everything. That was his motivation. I didn't get lucky enough to really know someone like Michael Jordan who was so competitive at everything. But I mean, I had a Photoshop with Tony, and while we were on the parking lot of the Alamo Dome. So he's 19. As we are waiting for the photographer to set up, we played soccer. Two French guys in the middle of the summer in Texas. He opened up my shin. I was bleeding like a beast on the concrete. And of course, he's like, I never touched you. I'm like, there's only you and me. What do you think happened? Everything was a contest to him. And every time I remember, point guard was signing a new contract, he needed to have the same plus something. Not because he was greedy money-wise, but because that's how you pay talent. That's how you recognize talent. And to me, I was still very, very French, learning about all of this. And he was the rookie. I mean, he was not a rookie anymore, but he was 22, and I was looking at him like, what the heck is wrong with you? But that's the vibe culture, and that's how I guess you become an Hall of Famer. And I'm not. And that's it. You have to be a special kind of human being.
You mentioned earlier, Tony, early in his NBA career, coming to America, all the struggles that come along with this, and how you kind of bonded with him over being away from your home country. How do you think that will translate to Victor Wembanyama's experience? Because I know he's got a really strong, rather large support group around him. His family, his agents, the team that does everything from physical conditioning to planning his whole career. Just what should we be looking for? What do you think about in terms of just adapting to being a superstar in America?
And that might be the biggest chance, because it was, to again put it in perspective, I was not just bonding with Tony, I was bonding with every international player, even guys that were not in San Antonio, like Stojakovic, Ilgauskas, I mean, all of them, because everybody was in the same situation. Kind of lonely, kind of, I need to talk about Europe. Even I know nothing about, Stojakovic country at the time. And I was like, dude, okay. But still, we bonded. And you're right. Wemby is coming with an army of people because his agents, I don't know, Puna India and Jeremy Mejana, there's two. It's a group of agents. They have pretty much every good players in their portfolio, every good players. And there's one of them is based in Dallas. The other one is based in France. They've been doing it I met those guys when Jérôme Moiseau, I don't know if you know that name, Moiseau. He was one of the first French players in the NBA. That's 25 years ago. And they know what they're doing. All those 20, 25 years of working so hard, setting up all those guys, making mistakes, learning from it, leads us to Wembanyama. And yes, they've been ready for a long time, just waiting to see where he was going to be drafted. Not what position. They knew last year. They knew 2 years ago he was going to be number one. It was just which team is going to get him. So I don't have an answer to your question. I believe it's going to be much more ready than Tony, because mistakes are going to be very, very difficult to make. They're covering everything. After that, what happens on the court is up to him. And that's we'll have the answer, after a season, maybe a good start of an answer of where he's going to go. But based on every discussion I had with people that know him, he's tough as a rock. He knows it, and he's super clever. So the guy knows what he wants to do, and that's why, and his group is taking care of sharing just enough. I mean, he's hiding right now. He's working hard. They're still spreading a few nuggets, this and that, like yesterday he was doing, spreading out. Like, I don't know how he does this. You've seen that?
Oh, the him squatting. Yeah, it hurt me just to look at that photo, trying to imagine doing that stretch. But you mentioned, Wemby's agent Buna. He was one of his first clients was Jan Mahinmi. So, you're right. They do have this long history of kind of dealing with international players, with French players. They know how to make that transition to get people comfortable playing in the NBA, comfortable in America, and I mean, 20 years ago that just wasn't the case. So I'm sure there will be times when Wemby will be homesick. He probably is already, right? But I think that it'll be different than it was with Tony.
The world is much, much smaller. I remember when I came to this country, whenever I had to see a soccer game, because that's still, soccer is huge, and I still struggle to call it soccer. I was going online and find it on some illegal websites, all kind of commercial popping up. That has changed, and everything has changed. When I was in Vancouver, I had American players complaining that Canada was such a different country. They didn't have the same KFC, and they had to pay with different money. And I was looking at those guys like, come on, man. But that was 20 years ago. Today, I mean, it's like Tony. I mean, I talked to Tony a few days ago. I met him in San Antonio. He's back today, opening up something in France. He's going to be back next week. Then he's traveling again. I mean, it's so easy to go from one country to the other one, from one continent to the other one. And it's the same for Wemby.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
For Wemby, what do you think the cultural fit is with the Spurs? Like, he could have gone to Orlando or to Houston. Like, they're their own lottery night. Houston, Detroit, all these different teams. We kind of saw him on the broadcast kind of secretly cheering every time another team was called. So he seemed really excited about coming to San Antonio. What do you think that excitement is about? What excites him about joining the Spurs as opposed to the Pistons, the Rockets, the Magic, one of these other teams?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that he was not a fan of going to Houston, and he made it clear in French when Houston's name got out. He's like, yeah, I didn't want to go. And I was laughing so hard because I was like, the moment that piece is going to get translated, every Spurs fan is going to be in his pocket, because he doesn't like Houston. He doesn't like Houston people. So, that was right. Beyond that, I mean, it's the Spurs culture is so important into international basketball. What Pop and RC and all those guys have done, I don't want to mention them all, but because I'm losing them and I'm getting old, but what they've done is really changed the relationship between FIBA basketball and the NBA. I mean, they won in a way that people that love FIBA basketball, and only FIBA, we still have those hardcore fans, like people watching. I don't know if you paid attention. The USA lost in the semifinal the other day of the World Cup.
World Cup.
Yeah. Team like Serbia and Germany, that's were absolutely not on the map in the last Olympic. It's just, they are good enough to win anytime because they play that old kind of basketball where everybody's sharing the ball, where you play just enough defense. You have big guys, and that's the key, for international game. It's a beautiful kind of basketball, and the Spurs play that kind of basketball for all these years, and people in Europe know about that. When they grow up idolizing Tony, but looking at the Spurs, looking at Team, looking at Manu, looking at all these guys, and being like, and Boris Diaw. I mean, Boris played a big role too, because when you share the ball so well and you're a big guy, that gives you idea. I mean, when he plays the way he is because of all those players. And, yesterday, I mean, it's been announced that Wemby doesn't want to play 5 or he's going to play power forward. Who cares? He may end up playing 3 in a few years. He's got options. He can do anything. Embrace that.
Yeah. You were mentioning before the podcast, you just mentioned FIBA. Are people upset with Wemby back in France for not playing on the World Cup team this summer?
Well, France dropped an egg. I don't know the expression. I mean, we made. That's it. Thank you. We reached the final of the Olympics last time, which was at 2021. So that's 2 years ago, and we couldn't even get out of the first round. Granted, Canada went very far, but still, we didn't play good. We didn't really have a point guard. Nando is now, I was going to say my age. No, Nando. He's only 36. But yeah, I love Nando, guys.
How old is Nando?
He's 36.
36?
Yes.
That's the thing that made me feel older. That's what makes me feel older than anything else that's ever happened in this podcast. Nando DeColo is 36 years old.
And he's getting on his way out, man, Jeff. He's been fantastic in Europe. He was the best player in Europe for many years. But he's getting old. When you play with kids that are 22, you cannot be a starting point guard. And anyway, France dropped one. When he wasn't there, it was all clear that he was not going to be there, and people react. Why? He's number one. Why isn't he pushing to be there? Because he's old, because he's got a bigger career in front of him, and because the Olympics are next year, and everybody's going to be there next year in Paris when, LeBron James brings his bodies, and France is going to do the same, and we'll see a different kind of game. But yes, losing, of course, you had a few people that, probably talk too much that say that, it's also on him because he wasn't there. No, come on. He's a 19-year-old kid. He's going to be great. Let him time to develop. But you know how it is. You can never please everybody at the same time.
Right. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't with those guys, because if Wemby does go play, then now the Spurs and San Antonio is mad at him before he even steps foot on the court here. So it's a no-win situation for those guys when it comes to international play. You just got to do what's best for you and not worry about the blowback, I think.
And that's what was done. And again, he took the decision with his group, I don't know exactly how it happened. It was done. Personally, I have no beef with it at all. I'm just excited to see him, start with the Spurs, and then next year he's going to go back with France, and he's going to be tremendous if the team is balanced. Because at the end of the day, you may have a Wembanyama. That's not going to change everything. Just like I hear, Embiid might become American. French,
right?
For the Olympics, because in the international basketball, you need a big guy that can dominate on offense. We don't have that right now. I have only love for Rudy Gobert, but he's mostly a defensive presence. And that's why it's so important to get those guys. Wemby will be there next year, and that's going to change the ball game, because suddenly you're going to have to double team, maybe triple team that big dude, and people will get open and will look better.
You talked about French basketball fans becoming true basketball fans, and part of being an American basketball fan is having unrealistic expectations for your teams. We have those all over the place in this league, in this country, and San Antonio included. What are the expectations that the average French basketball fan has for Victor Wembanyama as a rookie? Do they expect him to come in and dominate right away? If the Spurs win 35 games and miss the playoffs, is there going to be disappointment? Just how would you categorize the whole expectation level for him?
It is unfair, but it's kind of like 20-10 rookie of the year, and you're like,
home,
okay.
Right?
Yes. Where do we sign?
Yeah.
No, it's that's where everybody is for the most part. You have to see how the Spurs decide to use him. You can probably tell me more on the subject, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs were patient, because that's what they do. And if they are patient, he's not going to get 20-10. And 20-10, honestly, will surprise me. That's a lot.
It is. It's hard just to average 20-10 in the NBA. That is a super productive year. If he does that, I would exceed my expectations probably.
Yeah, that's a rookie of the year if he does that, I think.
Right.
But it could be, it could be a rookie of the year with a 16-8 and 4, because we don't talk enough about his defense. That's it's
for sure.
Absolutely amazing, the quickness, the mobility of that guy. It's like a moving wall, and every time I say wall, I think of Yao Ming stateside. That has nothing to do with Yao Ming. He's just it's like a shadow. You never know what it's going to be, but he's going to be there to deflect the ball and to block you and to bother you. And he's so quick. I've seen play. You all saw those players that I've never seen in my life before. And I was kind of looking at video of Karim and Wilt Chamberlain, and that's how far you have to go back to kind of look at players when they were 22, 20 years old, and you say, okay, I see something similar there. And that's crazy to talk about that.
I might not believe this even as it's coming out of my mouth, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think with Wemby, it might be even more likely that he makes an all-defensive team as a rookie than wins Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
Like maybe he can do both, but if you told me it could only be one, I might think it's more likely that he makes an all-defensive team because I think he's there already.
And I fully agree with you because that's what the Spurs do. They play the game as a team, and if what does serve the team, it's going to be to bring defense back and really, put the basis down for what a great team is going to be down the road. I mean, so I don't know if he plays for what happened to Sohan and so on and so on, but it's a good problem to have. Everybody's going to be long. Everybody's defense oriented. So yes, it's going to be pleasant to see.
I just love your response earlier to the controversy earlier this week. This podcast will come out on Wednesday, I think. I think it was on Monday when there was a bit of a internet stir about Wemby might play the 4, like Olivier mentioned earlier. And the perfect French sports writer, perfect French basketball fan response to that is what Olivier said. Who cares? It doesn't matter, but he's going to be awesome. He's going to be on the floor somewhere. Today's NBA is pretty much positionless anyway. So to get worked up about who's going to come off the bench, what position he's going to play, I just love that whole attitude of just enjoy it. And I think those are good words for all our listeners to live by for the whole season, to not get so worked up over the minor details of what position he plays. Is he going to be Rookie of the Year or not? It's just going to be a really fun thing to experience. And for Olivier, who I believe he spent this summer in Montana selling crepes. Is that right? Doing your chef thing?
Creperie.
It's an actual
creperie, thing, guys. Okay, yes. Get all the jokes out. Are you still creping? I got it. It's been done to me, but I'm a cliche French guy. I can write. I love sports. I played sport. I coach. And yes, I can cook. So I had a funny break. I moved away from Texas because honestly, I cannot handle the heat. I mean, 80 days over 100 degrees, that is madness. So
I'm so jealous,
man. It's beautiful. It was 70 degrees every day, 50 at night. I miss it.
And you were selling crepes to Montanans, right?
Oh yeah. I was introducing them to some very unassuming French food. French food doesn't have to be snobbish, and it was fun because you meet people. Every time I would see someone with an NBA jersey, I was like, "Okay, Golden State, let's talk about you guys. How do you feel about being done?" I was talking spike to all of that.
Where were you in Montana? What town or city?
You said Bozeman, right?
Bozeman. Okay.
Oh, it's nice, man.
That's great.
It's nice.
So he's coming back. Olivier's coming back after his summer of selling crepes to the tourists in Montana and giving them crap about their NBA teams. I wrote about Olivier in the newspaper a couple of years ago about your soccer projects. You're a Renaissance man from France. You were starting up a soccer project in San Antonio, continuing to work as a journalist. Going to be on RMC Radio. You can find Olivier Philpon on Twitter. Just a joy to talk to. We will keep in touch all season. We'll be happy to see him in the press rooms, the crowded press rows all season long.
I got one more question for Olivier. Can I get one in? One more question?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking, Olivier, if you look back at your entire career covering French basketball from Tony Parker to Wemby, who's the coolest player you've ever covered, and why is it Boris Diaw?
So you have the answer to the question. I love it. Because Boris, Bobo, as we call him, has had a way with life. I mean, that guy, you say Epicurean in English, someone who loves life. Okay, that's what he is. I mean, you need me to to beat any kind of, jumping record in the club. Let me put down my coffee and my beach shoes, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go back drinking coffee, get a glass of wine. You need me to have a triple-double tonight. I don't like numbers, but I'll do it because you asked nicely. I had so many moments with this dude. He's now the manager of the French national team, which cracks me up because he probably has forced his nature. But he's so good at talking to people that, making a square be around. He finds ways. He's just really enjoys life more than the three of us combined, guys. And yes, money helps. He travels everywhere. But what he does, it's awesome. And there's no doubt why he was a big friend with Thiago, with Paddy, with Manu, all those guys, because they're world travelers and enjoyer of life, all those people.
Yeah, he's the best dude. Liked him a lot.
Well, Olivier, it's just been a great joy to talk to you again. Again, it'll be fun to see you down the road in the arenas this year. We're all going to enjoy the whole Wembanyama experience. And I think that's where we'll wrap it up. Really appreciate the time. Again, Olivier Felpon with RMC Radio. You can find him on Twitter. We will have his name with this podcast, so you can look him up. And until the next time, take care of each other and keep it real.